Hello, welcome to Home Inspection Matters to a freshly shorn Brian Long. He's got a baby face. Makes me feel older now. I think I'm going to have to go a little bit bald on the face.
Yeah, it was summer, and I think the grayed beard, the massive ear hair, and everything. I needed just a little change. So
Well, you look good. You look young. You took off 10 years.
yeah, I scared my first inspection I had. The inspector had never seen me without a beard and was just like, "What the heck?" I was like, "It happens in the summer," but the last time I shaved was almost this time last year because when I headed out on the Appalachian Trail, I was able to stop, grow the beard back so I don't look like a haggard drunkard when showing up to inspections when I'm trying to grow the beard back. So I'll have to time when I grow it back appropriately.
Yep.
So,
So how's your week been?
man, I took time off, so I feel great. so, I've mentioned the patio project I'm working on here at the house, and I just saw some great weather coming in. And the problem with my house is I'm up on a hillside, so there's 12 steps from the curb, and I'm on a somewhat busy street, so I have no drop off place for any supplies and material. So to get 4 inches of gravel for approximately 600 square feet of patio walkway has been a challenge. So right now I'm about 3 inches. I need about 87 more bags of gravel brought up, and my base is done. And then I'm ready for sand.
There's no need for a gym, man. You're getting your workout
No,
doing that.
I've been to the gym once in 2 months, and my arms are getting shredded.
That's good.
so, yeah, I moved 60 some bags yesterday up and got them down, applied them where they needed to be. And I slept really good. And that was day 4 of hauling material. And that
Well,
felt
Vince
great.
would be proud of you.
Yes, yes. Man, Vince still looks good, man. I saw him a couple weeks ago at the alumni golf outing. And that man, I have no idea how old he is, but for his age, man, he's at least 20 years older than us, 30 years older than us.
I'd say he's about 25 or 30 years older than us.
Yeah, the man is still looking good for knocking on 80's door if he's not
Well,
80. So
I mean, the man lived in the weight room when we were kids. I mean, come on.
still does. He had a leg issue a few years back, and how he hurt himself was working out in the gym. Did something stupid, was got sidetracked, but he is still hitting the gym. Um, so clean living and loving the game, man. So it's helped him.
And
So
that Italian food, probably.
oh yeah, definitely the Italian food. I miss some of those spaghetti dinners between what the Dianas would do when they'd have the spaghetti dinner
Yep.
and what Vince would do. Man, it was some good living back then.
Yeah. So I've about got all my home projects done. I painted my garage door this weekend. Got my front door repainted. Been in the house for 7 years, so it was time for me to revitalize some of the outside. I've got a couple more things to take care of myself. Um, I'm OCD about my yard, and I blame that on my father.
Yeah.
So my yard looks like a golf course right now, which I love.
Hmm.
Nice and bluish green. It's kind of hard to maintain that here in South Carolina, but you got to get your watering days right, your pH and your soil right, thatch it, cut it the right height, all that fun stuff. But I'm there. The holes that the dogs dug in the winter in the backyard are gone.
Yeah.
Um, so we both got some new toys to play with this week. So what'd you end up getting?
Well, so I use a FLIR thermal imaging camera, and Um, very good camera. It's been some learning curves using it as far as how it goes from when I'm capturing the images, doing the inspection for clients, to how I upload them to the report. And you know this as well. We've got to use a third party software. It automatic syncs up, and then creating those files and moving it. Um, it's been a little challenging with that for the processes. Like I like streamlined, simple, plug and play, easy with stuff. what I love about those FLIR cameras is how good the quality is of the photos.
Yep.
So once again, delved into, do I want to change to a Hikamo? Do I want to change to a different product line? Or do I want to deal with the extra steps for the processes? So I stayed with the same camera. They troubleshot the issues I was having. It still works as a thermal imaging camera, but it's not creating my side by side photos
Yep.
anymore, even in settings. So stayed with another FLIR C5. They run about $600 for a camera, what we're using on site. But what they troubleshoot, and I'm sure you can testify to this, is just amazing.
Yeah.
And the one thing I use them for, and tell me if you think this is a good process. So this is totally for those listening, I've never mentioned this to John before that I do this, but I run hot water through a lot of my sinks when I'm filling them up. And then I pull that stopper and I'm looking for the hot water dripping with the thermal imaging camera. So I can almost be like draining the water, checking my GFCI outlet. I look at the camera to see if there's any leaks, take the photo, and then look with my visual eyes, and I can see if there's any issues or concerns underneath the sink by using that camera. So that's one thing I use it that's not traditional, I would say.
I do something very similar, but I do it in two-story homes.
Okay.
So I will run the shower for about 10 minutes
Mm-hmm.
with hot water, and then I directly go underneath where that shower is.
And you can see the line.
I point it right up to the ceiling to see if the shower pan's leaking or if the drain's leaking, because I had it bite me in the butt one time at a house where no problems. People moved in. 6 weeks later, they got a leak. Technically, I would have never been able to find it. And I said, just do me a favor. They're like, well, I was like, run the hot water up in the shower. They did. And I was like, yep, it's coming from there. And what happened is the gasket on the drain,
Mm-hmm.
15-year-old home, gasket on the drain, dry rotted or went
Right.
away. Plumber's putty, whatever they used, started leaking.
Yep.
And it's nothing that you would really catch because a home inspection is a non-invasive visual examination of a home.
Right.
And I looked at them. I was like, they called me. They weren't mad at me. They were just like, we don't think you would have ever found this, but we've got a leak here. And I was like, you're the only people we know. We just moved down here.
And
I
that's
said, not a
great. I
problem.
mean, that's the comfort level. I mean, that's what it's how do you have that relationship with your client post the inspection? Them
Yeah.
calling you because you've built that trust is a compliment.
Oh yeah.
Is it time out of your day? Is it worth you driving out there? The answer to me is 100%. Like you can't be out there for every little nook and cranny, but the fact that they had the comfort level to ask you to identify it first. So say you did miss something,
Yep.
you're going to be part of that process. The second part is it's not getting 37 opinions off a Facebook post for the local neighborhood Facebook
On
post
the
of what
neighborhood
they should
Facebook
do.
page.
Yeah, it's not information from next door. And I'm not saying you can't get good information from those sites, but why a home inspector is a consultant, it's based on what you've learned education wise, and it's good for them to touch base with you on that first. So
I mean, it's one of those things that I look at that those FLIR cameras make a huge difference. Like I always tell people this, I use them when I'm testing appliances such as a refrigerator, a stove, an oven. And one of the reasons why I do that is great, it's an electric stove. I can say it works, but if I have the FLIR camera and you can see the elements heating up, it can show it. And the other thing is it takes the question out, which burner didn't work?
yes, I do the same thing. I put a photo when I say I have a statement that says I turned the oven on,
Yep.
as far as the process. And that thermal imaging photo to me just goes to show that I did it.
I'd
You
use
know?
it in the refrigerator too,
Yeah. Yeah.
to show that the refrigerator is working. Now, I can say, yeah, the refrigerator worked. I actually have proof. Boom, there you go. You can see that the refrigerator is, now it's going to show the coldest part of the refrigerator, which is usually that back plate when you've got it in there. but I use it for that. I mean, I love those FLIR cameras. They really work great. I like the MX technology that they use with, and for people who are watching this, FLIR has a thing called MX technology. He talked about side by sides. Well, FLIR has the ability to take the thermal picture and the picture of the area. But what it does while you're taking the picture on the thermal cameras, it overlays it so you can see in the thermal picture the carton of milk, the two beer bottles, the strawberries in the fridge. So he uses a side by side. I actually take a picture in the fridge and then take a FLIR picture.
Yeah. Yeah.
I also use them occasionally when I get a little concerned about breaker panels. When I can start to if I
Yeah.
start feeling excessive heat on a breaker, I'm actually going to take a look at it with my FLIR, try to trace where it's coming from, see if I have any load on it, depending on if it's an HVAC breaker or a
Right.
breaker that was currently running. Kind of gives you a good idea of what's going on also.
Yeah. And I use it for is there supplied events,
Yep.
and that helps a ton. I had an order home where they added event in, and then it was staged. There was a bunch of vents on the second floor that were blocked. And honestly, the pressure was so low at the time that the home never achieved temperature the whole time I was there running it to get to 73 for the cooling cycle.
Yep.
So it was set at 73 when I arrived. I was outside for about an hour. I was inside for about an hour, still never hit 73 inside the home.
Yep.
And wasn't an extremely hot day. Um, Everything looked right on how they had balanced the HVAC, but the duct they added into the ceiling, I would expect to see the cold, the dark blue, like air was coming out of that.
Yep.
Because to me, the vent they added should have been a supply vent that they would have tied in and added another supply. Well, is the HVAC company totally balancing the system and adjusting for that extra vent, that distance it's being run? How does it affect what's on or off in the basement? Is there still basement supplies? You know, it's coming basically 3 floors up from the basement.
Yep.
But man, I just had very little blue coming out of it, and then there was no way to adjust the diffuser to see if it could open or close more because there was obstacles to get to it. But it was just an example of how to explain why the HVAC system wasn't performing well at the
Right.
time of the inspection. It never achieved temperature. It's
Yep.
not blowing out a tremendous amount of cold air. And then the other part too is the delta readings were low. It didn't.
Yep.
It wasn't an efficiently running system. So
I when I'm in an attic and I start to see damaged vents without the insulation's failing on them, or somebody
mhm.
decided to replace some of the ductwork and the ductwork doesn't look right, it kind of gives you some supporting documentation of like, hey, this isn't right. This needs to be fixed. Seek
Mhm.
qualified HVAC technician or licensed HVAC professional to address this. Um, and one of the hard things I try to explain people about when we use thermography is thermography, a FLIR camera, people got to understand thermography is a measurement, not necessarily of heating or cooling, it's a measurement of energy. And energy presents itself through heating and cooling. Am I correct in that interpretation from what we're talking about?
I I I mean, I'm following what you're saying. Like if it's textbook correct, I don't know, but it's right.
Yeah. So when we're looking at all this, thermography ties into so many facets of the home, and it's such a useful tool that like you had to buy a new one. We send them off to get recalibrated. It goes
Yep.
back to that expense of running a proper home inspection company,
Yeah.
updating your equipment, sending it out to get calibrated, getting your calibration certifications, making sure everything is running properly. Because if that equipment is not run properly or is not calibrated properly, it can put things off a little bit.
it could give you false information. I mean,
Yeah,
like with the example of that HVAC system, I have no idea why it's not working correctly. I can't tell you what other issues can, but it's meant to tell them that they need it looked at prior to, because
exactly.
it's not answering yes to a bunch of check boxes in the system.
Yep.
It's saying, hey, no, these are concerns, and the system's relatively new. I don't envision that to be a huge repair.
Yep.
But if we have, again, here's the personal side of it. You have somebody who is buying a home. There's a life change going on. There's stress that they have undue, the unnecessary stress, along with buying a home stress. And then they move in the summer, and next thing you know, they can't cool the top floor of their home.
Exactly.
It's becomes a big problem. So, want to be ahead of that. And man, calibration costs, you're lucky you don't do radon because
Well,
it's expensive, but it's worth it.
it also goes back to what we were talking about again. A good inspector is not a cheap inspector, in my opinion,
Right.
because a good inspector is buying the proper tools, is having them calibrated, is properly maintaining the tools, is sending them in. With your radon equipment, you're mandated to have them certified. You're mandated
Absolutely.
to have them calibrated. These are all things that factor into costs of inspection,
Yep.
quality of inspection, authenticity and dependability of the inspection.
Yeah.
So getting new tools is a great thing.
And right now it's the busy season with the radon equipment I have. I have two devices sitting at one home just to do the comparison check, because you have to run ever so many tests. You have to run a comparison check. So they literally have to set 8 inches from each other. So you have double that equipment running just to make sure that we're accurate in the information we're providing. We're taking out the human error that could be made for me making a mistake, having that accountability, and then submitting those comparisons to the Department of Agriculture. It's tracked very, very strictly. The one thing I like about buying the equipment I use is that it keeps track of all the information, and if I'm running 2 units in a basement or a first floor living because of the square footage, it acknowledges that the other unit is in the space. It averages it. It tells me when my comparison checks are. Is it the cheapest equipment to buy? No, but am I guaranteeing my clients to have the least amount of uh, I wanted to say inaccuracy. I'm ensuring them that I'm providing them the best numbers I can with the equipment off of that.
Well, it's kind of like the new toys I bought. I mean,
Yeah.
I bought a couple $1,000s worth of stucco, some Tramex moisture meters, and you know, came in Friday, has its calibration certificate with it, everything like that. And again, down here we have a tremendous amount of stucco. There's a community down here that went through a class action lawsuit, couple $100 million class action lawsuit because the stucco is bad. And again, it's an ancillary service, but stucco is expensive. You're
Yeah.
putting cement on the wood. We're not doing cement on the CMU down here.
And I've got a quick question. So, um, first of all, I've never heard of Tramex before, and that just surprises me. That's the great thing about this industry and having these conversations with different locations, is that there is still tools and equipment that you might find that somebody else is using. And I had seen some photos of them, but based on what you're using it for, I think I saw it in flooring situations.
It's also used in flooring. It's used
Yeah.
in roofing. It's used in butylene roofing to detect. I mean, it would be great for you for your flat roofs.
Yeah.
Um, and it's a multi-use tool that is for flat roofs, stucco, flooring. The smaller one that I got is specifically more of an interior one for moisture problems underneath tile. What you're in your what's it called? God, your classic homes that you're building. The old the God,
Like
what's the
terrazzo flooring? I'm sorry, I got a little lost on
no,
it.
I'm having a brain cramp. The
Yeah.
style of homes that you're building, the style of homes that you're inspecting out there,
The historic
um,
homes.
historic homes where
Yeah.
you've got wood flooring with tile on top of it.
Yeah.
This actually, the Tramex is actually able to detect moisture underneath that tile.
Nice.
Things like that. For me, I bought the Tramex for the stucco, and I also spent that was close to $2,000, and I spent another 900 on a Tramex for the interior that can be used for tile, cement, every type of flooring and wall covering possible. So I did the Tramex on the exterior. I did find one moisture spot that was a little elevated on the ephes, which is generally what you use that Tramex for, is on the ephes near a back door. And then I was able to check the moisture around the interior of that back door to see if the moisture made its way in.
So are they doing ephes and stucco builds side by side down there?
Combined.
Combined. Yeah, that's what I meant. Sorry. Yeah.
So all your accent bump outs are all ephes.
Okay. Is that a cost reason they do that, or is it just an application?
It's what caused them to have a massive lawsuit.
Yeah, because I mean, when I think of ESIF, I don't see EFIS up here a lot. It exists, and more so, I think about Taco Bell structures is how
Yep.
it's been explained to me. And we've seen them do it to a couple buildings where they had moisture issues on the exterior, so they'll do an EFIS coating on it, which is um, it's probably more at the top of your head. Can you quickly explain EFIS so that we're not saying something? It's
Uh, and
hold on.
I always forget the correct language.
I threw you under the bus here. So, um, uh,
You know, exterior insulation finish system.
thank you. Yes, yes. So again, it's a Taco
I
Bell.
wanted to make sure I got the verbiage right.
Yeah, it's an old Taco Bell basically. If you look at that, what looks like a foam, Taco Bell, that is EFIS, is how I think of it.
I mean, traditional stucco is hard coat. So you're going to have your wood,
Yeah.
you're going to have your tar paper, you're going to have your metal lath. Then you're going to do your rough coat, your scratch coat, your finish coat.
Mm-hmm.
Most stucco should be is a 3-part process. A lot of the stucco down here that we have problems with, we find that the people who did the stucco will do a 2-coat process. The wire will not be nailed properly, so the stucco starts coming away from the wall.
Mm-hmm.
You'll find out that the ephes and the stucco aren't installed properly so you'll start having moisture at the ephes. It gets trapped, and it acts like almost a vapor barrier that holds vapor in.
Mm-hmm.
You'll start having rotting at the base of the windows. You'll start having rotting at the sides of the door. But the equipment that's out there for it is absolutely amazing. I mean,
Nice.
the Tramex product that's out there is a multi-use tool. I'll be using this thing as much as I can, both of them.
Right.
I mean, for an ancillary service, it does cost because it took me 45 minutes just to do the stucco inspection on the exterior. And then we also have evasive stucco techniques too, where we're actually going to drill through the hard coat and we're going to measure the moisture on the actual wood surface if we start seeing areas of concern. The evasive tests are something that we try to do only if we have to, because we actually then have to penetrate the stucco and use a moisture meter, which again is not inexpensive. That has 2 prongs, probably about six inches long, about an inch apart, that we pop into the wood, and it takes a moisture reading based on current resistance in that wood, and it gives
Mm-hmm.
us the moisture content of the wood behind there. I've had some where I've gone in and popped it in, and it went through the wood, and it was off the charts because it was completely rotten and soaked to the ground. And you find those when people start building up their ground covering to the bottom of the stucco and then start covering the
Covered
stucco back a
stucco.
couple inches.
Yeah.
Because people don't realize it. Stucco is it's a cementatious product, but it wicks.
Mm-hmm.
You can take stucco and set it in water, and moisture will actually crawl up it. You got to remember, even though it's tar paper, it's going to hold moisture. You've got wood back there; it's going to hold moisture, and then now you're adding another product that'll still wick, and it goes up it. You can take a cold bucket of water, take a piece of stucco off the wall, set it there, take your FLIR camera out, and watch that stucco
Water, yeah.
start to wick up.
So when you're penetrating and doing stuff like that, how does that affect the finish of the home or when you're done? I mean, do you have to patch
So
it or?
the best way I can describe it is it's a drill bit about that big.
Okay.
Um, and it's a stucco inspection. I mean,
Yeah.
literally, when we go back in, we actually use a masonry caulk to recaulk in the holes
Okay.
that we've done. So we're trying to leave it, and I carry about 7 different colors based on. I mean, I've got a red, I've got a blue, I've got a gray, I've got a tan. We keep different colors with us, so that, and a caulk gun in the
Right.
back of the truck. So once I'm done, and I try to, most places I'm looking at are around faucets, exterior spigots, because they tend to leak.
You're not doing it right by the door as you enter the home?
Oh man. A lot of times what you find is, I've done some of these stucco homes, and they've had the houses have been re-roofed, and they haven't put the kick-out flashing back in. And when they don't put the kick-out flashing back in, you end up with a heavy amount of moisture right there in that valley.
Right down, yeah.
And I always find really high, and people don't realize, like, that's important.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's one of those things when you call out kick out flashing roofers, and everybody will tell you it doesn't need to be there until it needs to be there.
Until it needs to be there.
And you're talking what, a $5 piece of metal?
The worst part that I find is people will re-roof the roofer will re-roof the roof, take it off,
Mm-hmm.
and not put something back up.
Yeah.
I mean, it's literally like, it was there. It was there for a reason. Why'd you remove it?
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, something recently, this might take away from my credibility. But we had our roof done, as I've mentioned before. And I've always picked lighter coat roofings just for heat absorption and stuff like that. It's just something I've had on my old investment property. I did a TPO roof, so I had a white roof just because that there was no attic space and it was a living area, and I put in mini splits to help cool the area, but temperature control and efficiency was important. So they came through the home. They did a great job on my roof. I have no complaint with the roofer. They came back to do some finish stuff, and they painted all of my vents coming out of the home, out of like previous PVC exhaust and stuff in the home. They came back through and painted them to match the trim of the roof, which was all black. And it pissed me off just because I'm like, why did you apply paint to something that means now I have to maintain it? Exactly. Why did you paint this trim that went in when it was a white metal? I'm fine with white. They're like, nobody is fine with it. And every home I'm inspecting now, you see where the roofers are painting everything. And I'm like, don't paint freaking anything on my roof. It doesn't need it.
I find it funny when I go inspect houses, and I understand vent stack pipes, aren't necessarily the prettiest thing, but I'll see them put through the drain waste and vent pipes coming out of the roof, and they'll spray paint them. And then they'll spray paint them while they're on the roof. So now the shingles have spray paint on them.
Spray paint, yeah. I would have lost my mind if they would have done spray paint. They at least painted it with brush strokes. It's not the prettiest, but I was just like, why did you paint that? And the worst part is where they did some flashing between my bay windows. They painted that to match the color of the roofing material, and it was white, and there wasn't a coated one that would match that was there. And I liked the white, and I was like, wow, that looks really good in white. And I came home the next day and it was black. I'm like, why did they paint that black? Why they were here? What were they doing?
You need to write a letter to Alcoa.
Yeah, and I did have the roofer explained to me. I was like, it's something I've just never paid attention. They never did it commercially. Commercially, they'd never put that effort into it. But they're like, we really wanted to make your house look good. And I was like, you kind of made me mad. But
Um, so a couple things I wanted to talk about, and I think a couple things we can really dive into here. But I want to make sure we keep ourselves on track because you and I tend to
Get a little sidetracked.
well, um, I want to touch on something here real quick with everybody. Is as everybody knows, I'm a multi-inspector home inspection company. Um, in the past, I'd say 10 weeks. Um, Pleasantries and the unpleasantries of being a multi-inspector firm is having to find new inspectors. Inspectors go bye-bye. Um, Personality clashes, things like that happen. But bringing trainees on. I set my trainees up for success. I try to. I'm a pretty easy guy to get along with, but this job's not for everyone. Um, it's it, it may sound great and glamorous, but there's a lot of education, which Brian and I have talked about, uh, and there's some hours. You can make this a 40-hour a week job. You can make this a 60-hour a week job. You can make this an 80-hour a week job. It all depends on what you want. Brian and I are trying to accomplish. Brian's accomplished a work-life balance, being a single one-man inspection company, and he's done a great job. His ancillary services really add to his value. Um, Myself, I'm about growing a business that I can sustain and have something to pass on to somebody at some time. But I can say, and you tell me if I'm wrong, Brian. This job's not for everyone. Carl talked about it, and I've started to tend to notice it a bit. I think there's some inspectors that'll come to work for a while and think it's great, and they can do it on their own. And the next thing you know, give it 6 months down the road. Let's see if the longevity's there.
When we talked with Carl the other day, the one thing that really stuck with me was the fact of how he still gets a little bit nauseous or a little uncomfortable before an inspection, like when he's setting stuff up. That there's this, and I think that's a healthy thing, but
Yes, it is.
it's respecting the consultation that you're going to be doing for the new client about one of the biggest purchases of their life. I mean, it's where they're going to be eating, sleeping, living, learning, loving, growing their family in, raising their children in. It becomes, home is a home. And so there's that initial part of that you're being invited into their process to help them finalize their decision to purchase their home. And then you have everything that can possibly go wrong that you're going to find in the home and how to talk to them about it. And to hear somebody that's been doing it for several years more than both of us still gets that feeling, that little creative tension of what is it going to be to go in. It goes to show me that it's still, when you're serious about the profession, you're still going to have you're still going to want to be the best person that you want to be 7, 10, 15, 20 years later. You're still thinking about how to be the best inspector possible. And it's not just
Absolutely.
a job.
Absolutely. And I always think about it like this, like as I'm growing my business and growing my experience, and tell me if I'm wrong, I'm not thinking of ways to consolidate what I'm doing. I'm thinking of ways on how to expand and provide more information to the homeowner.
Yeah.
I think, you know, when I start thinking, I think one of the biggest mistakes people get into is they're like, well, I've been doing it this way for so long, I'm going to start doing it this way. And then they start compromising on their quality. And then next thing you know, your inspection went from being a detailed report to being essentially a drive-by. Um,
Right.
Not enough information to give a home buyer an educated decision. Not enough information in there to insulate yourself through any possible fallout from a homeowner trying to lay something at your feet that has nothing to do with you. Um, does that make sense?
It does. And I mean, I think the other part too, that there's a little bit of a trend I hear happening of where the descriptions for concerns that you're finding are 3 paragraphs long about why the concern is there.
Mhm.
And that's, I still don't see that being the role of the home inspector. It's really the, what do you see as the problem, why it concerns you, and that has to be pretty straightforward. It's got to be written to the audience that they can understand it, that the realtor can understand it, that then they can bring in the somebody to do the exhaustive evaluation to
Exactly.
why the problem is. Back to the HVAC. I have assumptions of why it's not working and 5 different reasons to give my client
Yep.
to solidify why I'm saying that you need to have it there. But each of those statements that came across of where it popped up in the deficiency, that wasn't one long statement. That was, here's 4 examples that tell you why you should have that done.
Exactly.
And then the HVAC guy takes it for the repair and how it should be done better, or says that it's an inadequate system to cool the home.
Yeah, I have it with one of the big things I get is I have a TPR discharge defect, and I've got TPR is defective, and I actually had to put in reasons why a TPR would be incorrect because shouldn't run uphill, shouldn't have a T fitting, should drop either to a pan, flow by gravity, all that. Because I used to just put TPR defect, correction, further evaluation is recommended.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I started putting, I have this one defect with that in there because 90% of the time the homeowner is calling the plumber that installed it and said, "Oh no, it's absolutely fine. The homeowner is no, or the home inspector has no he's talking about." So now what I do is with the list of reasons why the TPR, how the TPR should be installed, I'll highlight the item in the report. When I go through my audit, I'll highlight the item, bold it, and just send it out. And it'll still have all the things that could be wrong with TPR, but the one item that is wrong, I highlight and bold because a lot of times I'll have the buyer say, and I've had it happen quite a bit where the buyer will be like, "Well, their plumber came out and said it's fine." I go, "It's not. No, it's fine. No, the plumber's wrong. Who was the plumber? Is he a licensed plumber? Oh, no, it's their handyman they hired. Well, did he install the hot water heater? No.
Yeah.
Okay, well, here are the things required for this one component. Has to flow by gravity. Can't have any T fittings. Can't run uphill. All these things. And they start, oh, okay, but they've already closed on the house and they took the plumber's word for it. But meanwhile, it's in there.
Right. Right.
Does that
I,
make sense?
yeah, it does. It does. I'm trying to, I can't remember with my water heaters what I have for the relief valve on there. I I do something similar with, like, say, shingles. I'll have it start with shingle and I'll have like the 12 things that can be a concern with the shingle. And that's the one to try to limit what it is for the roofer that's going to look at it.
Yep.
And I feel like my water heaters, there's a bunch of stuff in my defects, and I might have a similar one that's a big volume of reasons of what it has to do, like what the clearance level is, what this is.
But it goes
Um,
back to that whole thing of like education,
yeah.
experience, knowing what you're talking about, um, and understanding that inspection is not for everyone. You've got to be able to be educated and put everything into bite-sized pieces for everybody.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just saying this because it's one of those things that I had a guy that worked for me for like 5 or 6 weeks. Do I think he could do the job? Absolutely. Do I think that he would grow? I think he would grow as much as I taught him. A home
Mhm.
inspector's got to be willing to grow and continue to grow and continue to educate himself, perfect his craft, and stick with it. And I think that everybody thinks it sounds great, but I think that there's a lot of people that get into this job that don't realize that the long term education, the long term continuing education, the long term uh, investment in the tools,
Mhm.
investment in the time, investment into all of that I think people don't realize that that's what's going to make you stick around for the long
Yeah.
term.
Yeah, I had, when I said I took time off, to catch up on some home stuff, um, I got 2 additional hours on some advanced HVAC courses through Internachi that I was taking. And it really felt weird to be, learning about boiler systems and those pressure relief valves and different stuff.
Hmm.
Um, a lot of it, I would say, is tied into the experience I've had over, a decade working with boilers. But how it's going to help my inspection process by just the notes I took and applying it to my education while I'm thinking about boilers and it's getting to peak, cooling season. But that's what it takes to kind of keep maintaining this is like you can say you take time off, you can say you do you're going to spend time with your family, but there's still in the back of your mind you're not just on the computer, watching Hulu. You're also delving into topics and continuing your continuing education to meet your
Yep.
state requirements and stuff.
And doing it every year and doing it constantly.
Oh, it's nonstop. Yeah,
And
it's.
constantly upskilling. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
just getting a license and getting certified and getting out there and start inspecting does not mean to stop learning and to
Yeah,
stop educating yourself.
I've challenged myself, and I'm meeting the goal. I'm not necessarily meeting the goal right now of 8 hours of continuing education a month,
Yep.
even through the peak season. And it's been a struggle through the peak season to get 8 hours in. And that's not credit hours. That's a sitting down to go through a module or
Yep.
online or sign up to another course. Um, but that's actually been challenging, especially um, May is one of our busiest months, as we've mentioned in the past, to still be able to sit down, not have any distractions, and continue in it. Um, what's funny is I love the topic. I mean, even sitting down and talking to you about this, sitting down and getting the continuing education is it's got to be a constant drive. We're a generalist of how many different components in a home,
Exactly.
how many different systems between geothermal, mini splits, boilers. That's just one part of your heating and cooling system
Hmm.
that we're going to provide you information about. Then you get into your plumbing systems, then what specs are for islands? How do you put in, where are outlets placed? What are the differences in outlets? And I mean,
Staying current with current code on houses that have been built,
right, right.
things like that. Yep.
Well, with historic homes, I'm not going to call out in a home that they don't have an outlet every 6 feet or every two
No.
feet in a kitchen. But I'm aware that it exists when I do new construction. If you walk in and you're not seeing those specs, you got to be aware of that stuff.
So what about the 60/40 rule?
60/40 rule. In what aspect?
They've gutted the house. More than 60% of the house has been gutted as far as electrical, drywall, plumbing.
It it depends on where I'm coming in on that. If those permits were pulled 10 years ago for that, I
I'm
where
talking
is
about
it?
the past 2 years. You walk in, the house has been completely flipped, remodeled.
Well, yeah, that's the thing that we're finding there. We're not seeing any permits for most of the flips we're seeing. Nobody's lived in a house. It's an investment flip over, and typically none of it's right. I do call out for outlets.
Typically, none of that's right.
I guess that's a little harsh. But I'll be honest. I'll admit here, my wife was off today and also did awesome barbecue. So I have been sipping a nice Pilsner beer here. So maybe I'm being a little too easy or a
No,
little
I
too
like that, man. I like
being a
typically.
little too hard on the flip, but that's typically what I'm seeing. Most renovation work that's being done with the homes that I'm seeing, um, it's several years old. We're not seeing people in some of the more expensive communities or home priced communities. We're not seeing them move after doing major renovations, and the construction is done pretty well. They're hiring the right people. The ones I'm having problems with are the investor flips
Hmm.
where they're um, they're buying single families in lower end neighborhoods. They're coming in with multiple crews. There's no project management oversight. They're not even adding outlets to bathrooms when they're redoing electric. They'll have
I
everything out and not adding an outlet.
I love it when I go into a house and it's got cloth wiring, two wire,
Mm-hmm.
but yet there's three prong outlets in every room.
Yeah.
One of
And
them are grounded.
not one of them are grounded. No ground to the home.
No
No
ground.
exterior ground. No
Nope.
tie into the plumbing.
But it's got a brand new panel
Yeah. With no grounds at
with
all.
no and no
No.
legend in the panel, and
No.
that's kind of a telltale. Like you have no legend. In a homeowner, I'll be like, you need to get an electrician on here. Well, I was like, there's been a lot of electrical work done. Why do I need to get an electrician? Well, you're missing grounds in every outlet. So, well, what's that mean? I was like, there's no legend in the panel. What's that mean? I'm like, the house has been flipped.
Right.
The house looks great. It's been flipped, and the electrical work is not correct.
Right.
Get an electrician in here. Then the
Yeah.
realtor will call me and be like, well, what's the problem with the panel not having a legend? I go, it's a brand new panel. They go, yeah. And I was like, you got outlets that are three prong outlets with two wires. Yeah. Well, I was like, can you not see a problem in this? And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, well, to put in a new electrical panel, you have to pull a permit. It has to be inspected by the city. I go, if that city comes out and is going to check that panel, guess what has to be done? You have to have a grounding rod. You're
Mm-hmm.
putting three prong outlets in there. You got to have a ground. If they wouldn't have touched anything, it would have been fine.
Right.
But now that they've changed it, you now got to change everything.
Yep. And it's one of those things that we'll see. I'll often see stamps that are of different ages of when the panel was done. So
Yep.
it's gone through some panel changes. What's been done in the kitchen remodel? It's obviously been done within the last 3 years or year,
Yep.
and then they've added it, but they didn't come all the way back with the new wire to the panel to actually have the ground, or they didn't install the grounding rod. So
Yep.
the grounding rod is probably a newer. Hey, I'm making it very bold that it's not there, so people understand that it's got to be corrected.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say new, but it's one of those that I'm finding. It seems now I'm finding it more and more often that we're finding that they haven't done any sort of proper grounding updates.
Yeah. I mean, and that's a big thing. People don't realize it.
Mm-hmm.
So things that kind of ties in with one of the things we were talking about, which is what we can talk about and what we can't talk about to sellers.
Yeah.
I had a incident in the past couple of weeks where, actually in the past 10 days, where the homeowner is literally like, well, how's the home look? Sorry, I can't really. This is the person that buys this actually pays for this report. Love to talk to you about it, but honestly,
Right.
the work I'm doing belongs to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Well, did it pass or fail? There's no pass or fail. Well, what's
Right.
wrong with the house? I can't. And I literally got followed for 20 minutes around the house. I was like, I can't really talk about it. They leave for a couple minutes, come back. So what's wrong with the sink? Why are you running the sink? What's going on? It's one of those things. Like, I think sellers, if you're a buyer of a home, realize as home inspectors, we're not really supposed to discuss this stuff with the sellers, and we don't, unless it falls into a couple categories. But for sellers, realize we can't talk to you about the home inspection. That home inspection is somebody else. Somebody else is paying for it. You're going to end up finding out what's in the report, if there is anything in the report that needs to be brought to your attention, when the seller provides you that.
It's not our job to tell them what
Yeah.
those concerns are.
But Brian, what can we tell them?
Well, this is what my little blanket speech to everyone is. If the seller is there, I'm like, in your home today, I'm going to write a bunch of stuff up and I'm going to be taking notes as I go along. And I can't really talk to you about anything that's in the inspection report. If I find something that is doing damage to your home, if it's not known today, I'm going to tell you about it. Like if I find a hole in the roof, as a made up an example, I'm going to tell you about the hole in the roof because you should probably patch that sooner than later. Like especially if it's raining outside. You should be aware of that gaping hole.
If I find a gas,
Fire, huh?
if I find a gas leak,
Yeah, gas leak, fire, safety, things like that. Things that could harm you or cause the property to devalue between the next 48 hours. I'm going to have that conversation with you. I don't want anybody to get hurt. And I think clients are respectful of that too. But the thing is that there's going to be, it's the as is condition of the home we're talking about today. So the stuff that we're critiquing that might be a defect, the our client needs to be made aware of that first, and then they talk to their agent about it and how they proceed about any sort of negotiating power with. But um, we can't talk to them about finding ungrounded outlets.
hmm
Now, if they have, one of the, if they have 20 outlets and six six surge protectors with everything plugged into one outlet, I might have a conversation with them
yeah,
about what they're doing, because that falls under a safety concern. But I'm lucky I have not had a homeowner around except for the beginning or an end of an inspection in probably about a year and a half. I haven't had one want to stick around or shadow with it. Um, and when I have had that, the times before, it's been that the seller is out of town and they know, or the buyer is out of town and they know the buyer isn't going to be there. So then they stick around for the home inspection.
I have quite a few down here where the sellers almost insist on being home. I had one Tuesday, yeah, yesterday, that we showed up and the buying agent arranged for our inspection,
Mhm.
sent an email to the selling agent. The selling agent paid no attention to the email. We show up. The homeowner, you got the wrong address. There's no inspection. So we have to leave. But I called the buying agent. I was like, listen, I've got a pretty full schedule. I can't really juggle this stuff around. This isn't my fault. Can you give them a call and see if maybe we can do the inspection? Well, the seller was like, nope, it's my home. I'm going to be home during the inspection. I have two dogs and they're going to have to come back another day. And I was like, okay, we'll be back Thursday. And then it came back to what time? We'll be there at 9:30. Well, 9:30 is not going to work for me. And I told the buying agent, I said, listen, 9:30 is all I have. You're more than welcome to call another inspector, but 9:30 is all I have. And it ended up working out that it's going to be 9:30, but buyers down here tend to want to be home on some of these homes. I'd say probably about 40% of them insist on being there when you're doing the home inspection. I don't know if it's because they don't realize that home inspectors here have to be licensed, that we have to do a background check, all this other
Mhm.
stuff, but they don't realize that some of us are registered with the MLS, any of that.
Yeah.
But buyers have to be at the home inspection for some reason. They feel
You
like
mean sellers.
their sellers have
Yeah.
feel like they need to be at a home inspection for some god awful reason.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I've even seen where there's renters, it's a single family home and the renters will want to stay. And usually what I see here is both the selling and buying agent are both having a conversation with them of why they shouldn't be there. Because that's the reason we do have the access to get in with the MLS. We have the background checks for our key access. We have our background checks for our state licensing. Um, we have that same level of scrutiny of having access to the home that the agents do.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it's totally um, important to me as the home inspector to make sure that me and my clients are respectful of taking care of that person's home.
Yep.
And if something does happen, you have to be super diligent about correcting the issue. And I don't know if we talked about it on home inspection matters or not, but I broke somebody's couch a month or so
Yeah, you
ago.
told me about this.
Yeah, I just honestly, it was something
It's a
that
very expensive couch.
Yes, and it came apart with wing nuts, and it was honestly a very simple fix. But
I was being facetious when I said
yeah,
that.
I know, yeah, yeah. But the thing that was the part that really bothered me is I had texted the selling agent um, about a window issue that would not be secured, that was on the first floor, and I wanted the homeowner to know that there's a problem with the window. It wouldn't go back into place because it's a first floor ground level access.
Mhm.
And they were away having coffee while we were inspecting the house. It wasn't like he wasn't going to come home soon. I had the next text about the couch saying, I think something came loose, but the foam had sunk down into the handle. And I had the photo to send. My phone rang. I left the house. The homeowner comes home and he's like, the home inspector broke my couch. And so the selling agent reaches out to me. He's like, this is an awkward conversation. I was like, absolutely, it's not awkward. I broke the couch. Like, I put my hand on it. I was reaching to do a window and I wasn't putting weight on. I don't know why the couch failed, but the couch had a big open figure eight in the arm handle. And I just touched it in the right spot. And luckily, how I broke it, I took it back to my wood shop. I replaced the piece of wood that was there. I rebuilt it and I had his couch arm back. But that's what we want to do as a home inspector. If something breaks or there's an accident in their home, I want to be respectful of their equipment. I was I was more embarrassed that I didn't send that text because I got a phone call that the agent had to tell me about the broken couch because it was there. I just didn't send it and got sidetracked and drove to the next thing.
Well, I mean, at the same time, it's not like you maliciously did it.
No, no, but I want to be the one telling. I want to be the one bringing it up that I did it, and at least there was like the photo documentation. I had a conversation with the buyer's agent and the client I was working for. Hey, I broke this. So it wasn't like it was being hidden in any
Yeah.
way, shape, or form. So
Um, so, what are your thoughts on the rates being held and the NRA starting, and what you were talking about with the NRA?
um well, so rates are holding steady from what I saw today in blurbs today, that they're gonna hold steady. And that's a bigger complicated thing of how does that affect inflation and everything for us that is outside of what I can even talk about. But I think it's good for buyers that it's holding. People that have been investing and buying homes, they're not gonna they're not gonna be able to refinance in 6 months and get a much lower interest rate. But um, it's good to see it holding, and buyers are going to become more adjusted to what the current interest rate is.
Well, it goes back to what I was saying before that, you know, we've temporarily kind of staved off a recession, but it means our economy is still strong and growing,
Mm-hmm.
but they haven't had the need to stimulate our economy much.
Yeah,
Our economy is still moving in the right direction. Uh, but I think it directly ties into what you were talking about, the National Realtor Association, the drop on waived home inspections too.
exactly. It's a 2% drop is what I saw, and that's great for us. And the thing I'm seeing an uptick in is buyers telling me that they have their inspection isn't it's an as is, or it's a non-negotiable based to a certain dollar amount, but they're doing the inspection for their own personal knowledge. And I'm like, money well spent. I
Yeah,
mean, spending, depending on what services and stuff they're doing, people are still doing radon, sewer, termite, and having the home inspection done so they know what they're starting with. And kudos to them, because it's what I've done on every home that I've purchased or investment property. There's still been an inspection process and a time for me to do the due diligence, to do a risk assessment of what I'm doing. And my first investment property my interest rate was 6.8. It was variable. It could drop down to 6 and go up to 13.3.
huh.
So that was my first investment property, and 8 was common for having people do investment properties, non-lived in home,
Yeah.
investments. So, I mean, seeing something at a 5.5% interest rate, it's not a 2.8. Yes, housing pricing's up, but to see that stabilize a little bit, I'm optimistic that it'll give buyers more comfort to buy. And I'm optimistic for the fact that more agents are being, in my opinion, responsible through that process, saying you still should have a home inspection for these reasons. Because the agent working with the sellers are often the contact prior to they get to us. I think buyers are not doing enough research to engage inspectors prior to their purchase. I would love to see that engagement happen a little bit ahead of the, hey, I need to have this done in 4 days.
Yep.
Um, but I think that they're listening to agents, and top agents and good agents are saying you should do this for your own benefit.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that just because I get the inspection. I'm saying it because you should do it before you buy. You know.
I think a lot of agents have had it during the years of COVID and the housing market was crazy and people were waiving inspections. I think a lot of agents have had it come to rear their ugly head a year or two later, where home buyers, where the agent was the buyer's agent, the home buyer was not happy because they found out there was a lot of stuff wrong with the house, and their agent let them waive the inspection
Mm-hmm.
instead of making them sign off. And I know a lot of agencies down here, a lot of brokers and BICs. BIC is a broker in charge. A lot of the BICs started having their agents have their clients sign waivers saying that they are foregoing the home inspection
Mm-hmm.
because of the fallout after everything had happened with people waiving inspections. Like
Yeah.
I said, I could tell you nightmare story after nightmare story of people over the past 3 years where I've gone and inspected the house and they've done an inspection after they bought it and they didn't realize how much money they're going to have to invest in the house.
Yeah. We had a buyer or a seller who waived their inspections 2 to 3 years ago. Came time for the sewer scope inspection when we came in. Not only was there problems with the sewer line, it was not tied in to the city's sewer. It was tied into stormwater. So you know, in this environment, they're losing some profit margin in that 3 years. They were making a hefty amount off the home, selling it 3 years later, but that was like a fourteen to $16,000 correction that needed to be done, and
Why they
luckily
get fined?
nobody got fined. It was let's get it corrected somehow. I'm not sure how it worked out that nobody got fined for it, because it is something that
It's a
everybody
big
was like,
fine.
yeah, we need to get this corrected now. And I mean, tapping into a, a new, if they had to make a new sewer connection, I think that's somewhere between $4,000 and $6,000 just for tapping into a new
Wow.
connection.
That's an
Yeah,
Uncle Eddie situation right there.
exactly, an Uncle Eddie. So shitter's full. um, but yeah, so I'm happy to see it. Not just for the fact that it means more inspections out there. It's the it's part of the process you should just do. I mean, we might be older guys. Gosh, we're 50 now, and we're saying you should have somebody tell you about your home before you buy it, but you should. It really,
I'm inspecting three builders' new construction homes
yeah,
because their exact words were, they're like, we know it needs to be done. We're builders.
yeah, yeah. Exactly. And they don't want the emotional standpoint of them going through and doing the work. I mean, if you're overly confident about what you're going to find in your home inspection, it's going to bite you in the ass. It's with my maintenance guys, I like to rotate them on buildings because you get blind to the stuff that you're not thinking about. And some
Yeah.
guys are better at certain aspects of what they do, and getting a neutral third party to come in and look at something is just doing your due diligence. So
All right, man.
All right, so you are gone next week, is that correct?
Week after next. Next week, I'm going to
Okay.
be bald faced like you.
Are you gonna shave next? You're gonna
I actually told my wife. My daughter won't let me shave,
uh-huh.
so she's going away to soccer camp next week. So I was told that I was allowed to shave next week, but I can't. I'll be 5 o'clock shadowed when you see me. But
That's when it
I don't
gets
know
scary
what it
for
is
me.
with my wife. She won't let me grow a goatee. Um, she won't let me shave. I'm allowed to have a mustache, but I look absolutely silly as with a mustache.
Yeah,
I look like my father as a firefighter.
yeah, yeah.
Um, I'd love to grow like a big old handlebar one,
Yeah, I
uh,
can't pull any of that off now.
but
So
I'm gonna shave probably next week. It was already on the calendar, but the week after next, I'm going to be on vacation. You're going to take the reins on this.
yeah, yeah. I've got a couple ideas. I might go another guest format, or it might be something I do on site. I might have a little bit fun of what we
That's
do. I
good.
just figure it out. So again, this is creating this content is we're not professional content creators.
Nope.
We are home inspectors that we use this as an outlet to discuss things that are happening with our week, help inform buyers. And if it resonates with people and you have questions, we want to be there available for people to discuss why home inspections are important. So
Yeah. And I tell people all the time, this is basically my group therapy every week.
I definitely agree. Definitely agree. All right, Jan. Well, you have a great evening, sir.
Absolutely. You guys be safe, and everybody have a great week, and talk to you soon.
Take care.